It's almost a rite of passage for any new Bond game to be compared to GoldenEye 007, a 1997 title for the Nintendo 64 that turned the suave spy into a household name among console owners when it was released. It's since been a standard for every subsequent title that's come after it, with some measuring up to it more than others over the years. Its impact on console shooters and multiplayer in such titles is undeniable after all. But we've got 007 First Light now, and it's very, very good. Early impressions have already called it the best Bond game since GoldenEye, and there's even talk of it being the best Bond game ever. But can the two titles really be compared? Should they? Well, we'd say yes, as they're both quite relevant to Bond's presence in gaming, even though First Light is a third-person narrative-focused title that's vastly different from the N64 shooter that GoldenEye aimed to bring to us. But where the latter turned the 007 brand into a great shooter, First Light has used it to create a modern classic that shapes up as a more complete Bond adventure on the whole. Why do we say that? We're happy to explain. The complete Bond fantasy. It's a good idea to consider what GoldenEye did for Bond video games back in the late 90s. That was a time where James Bond was known either for his iconic films or perhaps Stephen Fleming's novels on which those said films were based. As such, the game brought a classic spy experience to the table, with mission objectives, guns, gadgets, a sort of stealth-like mission design, and of course, the chaos of split-screen multiplayer. It was a formula that worked very well at the time, considering that Bond hadn't been put into a video game that had continuity with the films, which immediately made GoldenEye an attractive option for fans, while remaining a potent shooter for those who weren't as enthusiastic about the character. But things have changed in the 29 years since it was released. That's where First Light comes in. It brings a better realized stealth system to a more open-ended mission design in which melee combat, cinematic escapes, spycraft that uses Bond's natural charisma and his talent for infiltration, set pieces, and a whole lot of the signature spectacle that we've come to expect from the IP, all packed into a narrative that lands quite well. Where its more popular predecessor sold the illusion of Bond with a gun pretty well, this one is turned to make you feel like Bond across a wider variety of circumstances. It's also important to consider that GoldenEye was tied to its eponymous film. While First Light has the advantage of being a fully independent story, IO Interactive has made full use of that distinction, giving us a version of Bond who is younger, more reckless and impulsive, and in the early stages of his journey to the 007 moniker. That's important, as it immediately sets itself apart from a title that was a film adaptation in video game format. First Light has more freedom to weave in a strong cast of characters who are both familiar and fresh, making it a unique take on James Bond that GoldenEye cannot match up to today. It presents a take on Bond that's based on a fulfilling character arc, as opposed to merely retelling one of his adventures. There's more to that distinction than what we've discussed, and comparing the two titles on how they frame Bond is an important part of any comparison between them. A modern Bond blockbuster. Take a look at a critical analysis of First Light, and you're going to see a common theme unfolding before you. The fact that it feels like a blockbuster Bond story wrapped up in a very solid video game. It's a game that understands that Bond is more than an expert marksman who guns down opponents in well-lit corridors. It makes him the first draft of a very polished operative who oozes charisma and class as he goes about his duties for MI6. In his essence, Bond is a man who isn't afraid to deviate from his mission plans if the situation demands it, and he does so with an elegance and grace that makes even the most impossible feats look easy. He does it all in style, and First Light is a title that presents that facet of the main man so well, it transcends anything that's come before it in this niche of the gaming world. One important aspect that set it apart from GoldenEye is the way in which combat is handled in the game. Bond can use his fist and is quite brutal when things go south, as are his enemies. Fights in First Light are a sight to behold no matter your level of skill at chaining attacks between multiple enemies. Your license to kill isn't a given, but is rather a last resort to be used only when the enemies around you escalate things to present a credible threat to your life. That's an aspect of the experience that's so crucial to a Bond game feeling like one, and is one area where First Light definitely takes the win over GoldenEye. Where the older title felt like we were controlling Bond on a mission, First Light has made us feel like we're Bond in a movie that's exploring the early chapters of his illustrious career at MI6. But of course, GoldenEye's influence and legacy cannot be written off as a mere coincidence. Its cultural impact is something that the new game cannot replicate overnight. Aside from decades of nostalgia backing it up, alongside the fact that it's been a defining experience for video games featuring Bond, it also raised the bar for shooters and multiplayer games in general. It definitely is a game that's rare, and the reverence it continues to enjoy is well earned. First Light could get there in time, but that kind of a legacy is hard to build in the relatively short time that it's been on the metaphorical shelves. It might be the better Bond game overall, but only time can tell if it grows into the most important one there is. Is that a possibility though, considering just how beloved GoldenEye has managed to be over the years? Stick with us and allow us to present a case for why that's definitely a possibility. The real winner. If you look at which one of the two games is an objectively better Bond experience, there is a clear winner. First Light gives good old James more than just his guns. It lets him pull off beatdowns that come with the brutality that's taken for granted in his line of work. It gives him all the room he needs to improvise once he's in a mission area, letting him use his spy skills to the fullest in a way that feels like it was all your idea. You could just chase down the first lead that you find and end up at your objective. But the real joy is in taking the time to relish each mission and find all the different ways to earn your badge at MI6. Of course, the presentation is an important talking point with the visuals and cinematic polish working very well to sell the experience, the blockbuster pacing and orchestral score working so darn well to keep you on your toes. But perhaps the most important way First Light becomes the definitive Bond experience is in the way it explores the character and his supporting cast. Bond isn't just a character model moving through elaborate levels on his way to his next objective or climactic boss battle. He's a real man with real insecurities who's on his way to becoming a name that's going to reverberate throughout the history of his workplace. Although he's young and carefree enough to not see it yet, it humanizes him while still letting him be a capable and often incomparable protagonist, one who doesn't hesitate to seize the initiative in any given moment. GoldenEye is the best Bond game for 1997 and beyond, but First Light is the best Bond game for 2026 and beyond, as it makes Bond human while also giving us a glimpse of the suave secret agent who grows into a living legend. And in doing so, it has set itself up for success. But if we were to pick a winner, we'd say it's the lot of us who are sitting pretty. First Light might just change conversations about future Bond games, gradually edging out GoldenEye as a bar against which future efforts are measured. In doing so, it's given us players a new point of reference for a Bond game, and a new benchmark for others to try and live up to. The future is bright for Mr. Bond, and we can't wait to see if we get to join him again on his rise within MI6's ranks. Hey, did you know that we at GamingBolt upload new videos every day? Stick around, drop a like, subscribe, and hit that bell. And let us know what kind of content you'd like to see in the future with a comment below.